Being broke costs you double, literally double. That $600 washing machine you need, if you're broke, you'll end up paying $1,200 for it. That $120 tire repair becomes $270 when you don't have the cash. And this isn't some abstract concept I'm talking about. This is real money coming out of your bank account right now. The math is so clear that once you see it, you can't unsee it. Most people think being broke just means not having money today, but it's actually way worse than that. Being broke is a multiplier that makes everything you buy cost more. And I'm about to prove it to you with math so simple, you'll wonder why nobody ever showed you this before. I'm Ricky. I make videos breaking down the math of money that nobody teaches you. If you're tired of feeling broke, hit subscribe. Now let me show you exactly how much being broke is actually costing you. Here's what this actually looks like in real life. You're living paycheck to paycheck, not because you're irresponsible, not because you're buying stupid stuff, but because your income and your expenses are basically the same number every month. Maybe you've got a couple $100 left over if you're lucky, and then your car breaks down. Nothing catastrophic, just needs new brakes. $600. But you don't have $600 sitting around, so you put it on a credit card. You tell yourself you'll pay it off next month. But next month comes and there's something else. Your kid needs new shoes. The electric bill is higher than usual. Your phone breaks. So that $600 sits on your credit card. And now you're not just paying $600 for brakes, you're paying $600 plus interest. Every single month that balance sits there, you're paying more. And here's where it gets really frustrating. If you had just had the cash in the first place, those brakes would have cost you $600. One time, done. But because you didn't have it, those same brakes might end up costing you $700, $800, maybe even $1,000 by the time you actually pay off that card. You paid extra for the privilege of not having money. That's the broke tax. And it's not just car repairs, it's everything. You can't buy in bulk because you don't have the upfront cash, so you pay more per unit every single time. You can't put down a bigger down payment on a car, so your monthly payment is higher and you pay more interest. You can't afford the annual insurance payment that gives you a discount, so you pay monthly and it costs more. You overdraft your account and pay $35 for being short $20. Every single financial transaction you make costs more when you're broke, not because the product costs more, but because you're forced into the expensive version of everything. And most people just accept this as normal, like this is just how life works when you don't have money. But it's not normal. It's a system. And understanding how this system works is the first step to getting out of it. And here's the thing that nobody talks about. This isn't happening to you because you're bad with money. It's happening because the entire system is designed to work this way. Now, you might be thinking this is just about interest rates and fees. Like, if you just avoided credit cards and overdraft fees, you'd be fine. But that's not actually what's happening here. The real problem is way deeper than that. Here's what most people don't realize about being broke. It's not a state of having no money. It's a state of having no options. And when you have no options, you are forced to take whatever deal is in front of you. You can't shop around for the best price because you need it now. You can't wait for a sale because your situation is urgent. You can't negotiate because you have no leverage. Think about it like this. When you have money saved up, you get to make decisions on your timeline. You can wait for the right deal. You can compare options. You can say no to things that don't make sense. But when you're broke, time becomes your enemy instead of your friend. Everything is urgent when you're broke. Your car needs to be fixed right now because you need it to get to work tomorrow. Your kid needs those shoes today because school starts Monday. You need to pay that bill this week or they shut off your power. And businesses know this. In fact, they build their entire business model around it. Payday loan companies don't put stores in rich neighborhoods.
Rent-to-own stores don't advertise in areas with high credit scores. They know exactly who needs them and exactly when they're desperate enough to accept terrible terms. These businesses are specifically designed to profit from urgency, from lack of options, from the math of being broke. The payday loan industry makes $9 billion a year in fees. Rent-to-own stores make another $7 billion. That's $16 billion extracted from people who have the least. That's not a side effect. That's the business model. And here's the part that really gets me. Society acts like this is a personal failing. Like if you're paying more for the same stuff, it's because you made bad choices. But the system is literally designed to charge people more when they have less. That's not a bug, that's a feature. The poorest people in this country pay the highest prices for basic necessities, not because they're making worse decisions, but because they're making decisions from a position of having no choice. And that position costs money, real, measurable, calculable money. So, let me show you exactly how much. Let's break down the actual math of what being broke costs you over time. I want to use real numbers here because this isn't theoretical. This is happening to millions of people every single day in America. Let's say you need a new washing machine because your old one finally died. A decent washing machine costs about $600 at a regular store. If you have $600 in your savings account, you go buy the washing machine. You bring it home, you use it for the next 10 years, and it costs you $600 total. That's the end of the story. But if you don't have $600, you have a completely different set of options. You could put it on a credit card with an interest rate of around 20%. If you're only making minimum payments on that card, which is usually about 2% of the balance, you're going to be paying off that washing machine for years. By the time you're done, that $600 washing machine actually cost you closer to $900. You paid $300 extra just because you didn't have the cash up front. But wait, it gets worse, because maybe you don't even have a credit card, or your credit cards are maxed out. So you go to a rent-to-own place instead. These stores will let you take home that washing machine today with no credit check. Sounds great, right? Except they're not charging you $600. They're charging you maybe $30 a week for 18 months. That's $30 a week for 18 months. That's $2,340 for the same washing machine, the exact same machine that costs $600 at a regular store. You just paid almost 4 times as much because you needed it now and didn't have the cash. That's not an exaggeration or a made-up number. That's actually how rent-to-own pricing works, and millions of people use these stores because they don't have another option. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Let's say you try to avoid both of those options. You decide you're going to save up for the washing machine instead. Good decision, right? Except you don't have a washing machine, so now you're going to the laundromat every week. A typical load at a laundromat costs about $4 to wash and another $4 to dry. If you're doing 4 loads every week, that's $32 every single week. Let's say it takes you 5 months to save up $600. That's 20 weeks at the laundromat. 20 weeks times $32 is $640. So by the time you saved up enough to buy the washing machine, you already spent more than the washing machine costs just on doing your laundry. You literally paid for the washing machine twice, once at the laundromat while you were saving, and then again when you finally bought it. Do you see what's happening here? Every single path you take when you don't have money up front costs you more. There is no cheap option when you're broke. The credit card option costs you 50% more. The rent-to-own option costs you 4 times more. The save-up-for-it option costs you double because you're paying for the service while you save. This is the math of being broke, and it applies to everything, not just washing machines. Now let me show you why this pattern exists, because once you understand the why, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Here's the thing. When you don't have money saved, emergencies don't just cost more, they multiply. Let me show you what I mean. You're living paycheck to paycheck and you get a flat tire. The tire costs $120 to replace, but you only have $80 until payday, which is 5 days away. So you have a few choices here. You could overdraft your account to pay for the tire right now. That's $120 for the tire plus a $35 overdraft fee. So you just paid $155 for a $120 tire. Or you could wait until payday to fix the tire. But you need your car to get to work, so maybe you take an Uber for those 5 days instead. Let's say your commute costs $15 each way in an Uber. That's $30 a day times 5 days, which is $150. Plus, you still have to pay the $120 for the tire on payday. So now you're at $270 total for a flat tire. Or maybe you borrow the money from a payday loan place. They'll give you the $120 today, but you have to pay back $150 on your next payday. That's a $30 fee for borrowing money for 5 days, which works out to an annual percentage rate of over 300% if you calculate it out. Every single option costs you more than just paying for the tire would have cost you if you'd had the money. And here's the thing that makes this so devastating over time. These aren't one-time events. When you're broke, emergencies happen constantly because you can't afford preventative maintenance. You can't afford to go to the dentist for a cleaning, so eventually you need an expensive root canal. You can't afford good shoes, so you buy cheap shoes that wear out fast, and you end up buying shoes 3 times as often. There's this famous quote from the writer Terry Pratchett that explains this perfectly. The reason that the rich were so rich was because they managed to not have to spend their money. A poor man buys a cheap pair of boots for $10 that last a year or two. A rich man buys expensive boots for $50 that last 10 years. The poor man has spent $100 on boots over 10 years and still has wet feet. The rich man spent $50 once and has dry feet the entire time. That's the math of being broke in one simple example. You pay more over time because you can't afford to pay less up front. And it's not just boots or washing machines or tires. It's literally everything in your financial life.
Let me give you some more examples of how this plays out in everyday life. Because once you start looking for this pattern, you'll see it absolutely everywhere. Let's talk about banking for a second. If you have a certain amount of money in your checking account, most banks will waive the monthly maintenance fee. Usually it's something like $1,500 minimum balance. If you keep that balance, the account is free. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're probably not keeping $1,500 in your checking account. So you get hit with a $12 monthly maintenance fee. That's $144 a year just for the privilege of having a bank account. Meanwhile, someone with money pays nothing for the exact same account. Now think about groceries. When you have money, you can stock up when things are on sale. You see chicken breast on sale for $2 a pound instead of $5, and you buy 10 pounds and freeze it. You just saved $30 right there. But when you're broke, you can't do that because you need that money for other bills this week. So you buy exactly what you need for the next few days, and you pay full price. Over the course of a year, that person who can buy in bulk probably saves $500 to $1,000 on groceries for buying the exact same food. Here's where it gets even more frustrating. Car insurance. Most insurance companies will give you a discount if you pay for 6 months or a year up front. It's usually about 10 to 15% cheaper than paying monthly. So if your insurance costs $1,200 a year, you could pay $1,000 up front and save $200. But if you're broke, you can't come up with $1,000 at once. So you pay monthly, and you end up paying the full $1,200. You literally paid $200 extra for the same insurance because you couldn't afford the discount. Now, let me tell you about healthcare, because this one makes me absolutely furious. When you have money and good insurance, you go to the doctor for regular checkups. You catch problems early when they're cheap and easy to fix. You get your blood pressure medication, it costs you $10 a month, and you're fine. But when you're broke and uninsured or underinsured, you can't afford that $10 medication. You definitely can't afford the $75 doctor visit to get the prescription in the first place. So you just deal with it until it becomes an emergency. And then you end up in the emergency room with a hypertensive crisis. Now you're looking at a $5,000 ER bill for something that could have been managed for $120 a year in medication.
You paid 40 times more because you couldn't afford the cheap prevention. Let's talk about transportation. When you have money, you can buy a reliable used car for maybe $10,000 or $12,000. You do regular maintenance, change the oil every 5,000 miles, and that car lasts you 10 years with minimal problems. But when you're broke, you buy whatever you can afford right now. Maybe that's a $2,000 car that's already on its last legs. And because it's old and poorly maintained, it breaks down constantly. You're spending $300 here for a repair, $500 there for another problem. Over the course of 3 years, you've put $4,000 into repairs on a car that's barely running. Then it finally dies completely, and you have to buy another cheap car and start the cycle over again. Meanwhile, the person with the reliable car spent $10,000 once and has been driving worry-free for a decade. Housing. This one is probably the biggest example of all. When you're broke, you usually can't afford a down payment on a house, so you rent instead. Let's say rent in your area is $1,500 a month. Over the course of a year, that's $18,000. That money is gone forever because you're not building any equity. Meanwhile, someone who had enough for a down payment buys a house. Their mortgage payment might actually be less than your rent, maybe $1,300 a month. And every payment they make builds equity in an asset they own. After 30 years, you've paid over $500,000 in rent and have nothing to show for it. They've paid off a house that's now worth way more than they paid for it. Same time frame, same money going out every month. Completely different outcomes. All because one person had enough money up front for a down payment and the other didn't. Even something as simple as your cell phone costs more when you're broke. If you have good credit and money up front, you can get a postpaid plan with a major carrier for maybe $50 a month. But if your credit is bad or you can't afford the deposit, you're stuck with prepaid plans that cost $60 or $70 a month for worse service. You're paying more for less because you don't have the credit score or upfront cash. Okay, let me add all of this up for you because I want you to see the full picture. Banking fees, grocery premiums, insurance costs, healthcare delays, transportation issues, housing disadvantages. If we're being conservative with the numbers, the average person who's broke pays an extra $8,000 to $10,000 per year just for not having money up front. That's not counting interest on debt. That's just the broke tax on everyday living. Think about what you could do with an extra $10,000 a year. This is what I mean when I say being broke costs you double. It's not just about interest and fees. It's about being locked out of every single financial advantage that exists. Now, here's the part that's going to piss you off, and it should. This entire system isn't an accident. It's designed this way on purpose. And I need you to understand this because it changes how you think about your own financial situation. There's this concept in economics called price discrimination. Basically, it means charging different people different prices for the same thing based on what they can afford to pay. And our entire economy runs on this principle. Airlines do it with ticket prices, hotels do it with room rates, but the version that affects everyday people the most is what I call poverty pricing. It's charging people more when they have less because they have no other option. Think about payday loans for a second. The average payday loan charges about $15 per $100 borrowed. You borrow $400 Tuesday, and you pay back $460 on Friday when you get paid. That's $60 for a 3-day loan. If you annualize that interest rate, it comes out to over 400%. 400% interest. No wealthy person in America is paying 400% interest on anything. They're getting loans at 3, 4, maybe 5%. The people with the least money are paying 100 times more for the same product, which is access to cash. And these companies make billions of dollars a year doing this. Rent-to-own stores, same thing. Their entire business model depends on people not having money up front. They know their customers can't afford $600 for a washing machine, so they break it into weekly payments that seem manageable. And by the time you're done paying, you've spent 4 times what that item actually costs. These companies specifically target low-income neighborhoods. They advertise no credit checks and easy approval. because they know exactly who their customer is and exactly why that customer needs them. But here's what really bothers me about all of this. Society looks at someone using a payday loan or shopping at a rent-to-own store and thinks that person is making bad financial decisions, like they're being irresponsible. But that person isn't making a bad decision. They're making the only decision available to them in that moment. When your choice is between a 400% interest payday loan or not making rent and getting evicted, the payday loan is actually the smart choice. When your choice is between paying 4 times too much for a washing machine or not having clean clothes for work, the rent-to-own store makes sense. The problem isn't the decision. The problem is that these are the only options available when you don't have money. And the longer you're stuck in this cycle, the harder it becomes to get out, because you're constantly paying extra for everything, which means you never have enough left over to build any kind of cushion. It's a trap. So, let's talk about what actually breaks this cycle, because understanding the problem is important, but it doesn't fix anything by itself. The real shift that needs to happen is moving from crisis mode to planning mode. And I know that sounds impossible when you're living paycheck to paycheck, but stay with me here because this is where everything changes. When you're broke, you're constantly making short-term decisions because you have to. You're thinking about today, this week, maybe this month if you're lucky. Every financial decision is about immediate survival. But wealth, real wealth, is built on long-term thinking. It's about making decisions today that benefit you a year from now, 5 years from now. And the gap between those two mindsets is the actual problem. Here's what I mean by that. When you buy that rent-to-own washing machine, you're solving today's problem. You need a washing machine right now, and this gets you one. But you're creating a massive problem for future you. Future you has to make those weekly payments for the next 18 months. Future you is paying 4 times too much. Future you has less money because of the decision you made today. The same logic applies to everything. Overdrafting your account solves today's problem, but creates tomorrow's problem. Taking out a payday loan solves this week's problem, but creates next week's problem. And when you're constantly creating problems for future you never gets ahead. The way out of this isn't about making more money, although that obviously helps. It's about breaking the cycle of robbing future you to pay for today. And that starts with building even the smallest buffer between you and disaster. I'm talking about $50, $100 if you can manage it. Not some big emergency fund that takes years to build. Just enough money that the next small emergency doesn't turn into a cascade of fees and interest charges. Here's exactly how you start. Next time you get paid, before you pay any bills, move $10 into a separate account. Not $50, not $100,
Just $10. Yes, I know you need every dollar, but here's what happens. That $10 sits there. Next week, another $10. In 2 months, you've got $80 sitting there. And then something breaks. Instead of overdrafting or using a credit card, you use that $80. You still need to cover the rest, but you just saved yourself $35 in overdraft fees. That $35 goes back into the buffer next month. That's how it grows. Now, some of you are thinking, Ricky, I literally don't have $10 extra. You don't understand my situation. And you're right. I don't know your specific situation. But I do know this. The system is counting on you staying in crisis mode because crisis mode is profitable for banks, for payday lenders, for rent-to-own stores. The only way to beat the system is to stop feeding it. Even if it takes you 6 months to save $100, that's 6 months closer to not paying double for everything. When you do build that buffer, don't touch it unless it's a real emergency. Not, I want new shoes emergency, my car broke and I can't get to work emergency. This buffer has one job, to stop the cascade of fees and interest that makes small problems expensive. Because here's what happens when you have that tiny buffer. The next time you get a flat tire, you can just pay for it. No overdraft fee, no payday loan, no Uber rides for a week. Just $120 for a tire, and you're done. And suddenly, you're not paying double anymore. You're paying the regular price like everyone else.
That one small buffer just saved you 30, 50, maybe $100 on that single emergency, and that savings can go toward building the buffer even bigger.
All right, if you made it this far, you now understand something most people never figure out. Being broke isn't a personal failure, it's a system designed to keep you paying extra for everything. The difference between being broke and being stable is about $1,000 in savings. That's the line between paying regular price and paying the broke tax. The system makes that $1,000 seem impossible because if everyone had it, the payday loan industry would collapse. Don't let them keep you there. If this helped you see money differently, hit subscribe. I break down the math of money every week. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Now go look at your bank account with fresh eyes and decide you're done paying double. I'll see you in the next one.